The end. We did it. Yeah. Yes, they did. They helped. And I guess that's why Orochimaru looks like we're cracking the code. We're going deep in. I guess that's why Orochimaru looks like Goemon is because TMS helped. All right. So, um this game's wonder it's like I'm torn here because I'm very 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 impressed with the production value of this game, but the gameplay in a number of respects I'm not. So I'm giving it a 74. I don't think it's quite the solid recommend, thumbs up play game, but it is incredibly good in terms of its presentation. I'm impressed with the character. I guess the character interactions, at least mainly through Tsunade. Unfortunately, the characters never really had cutscenes where they were talking amongst themselves. I think that would have been probably too difficult to choreograph. Ziria was shown to have personality at the very beginning of the game, but then we had like no scenes with Ziria for the remainder of the game, which is kind of unfortunate considering like I thought it was going to be like kind of wisecracking and butting heads against a lot of people, including the one Tanuki person that we were tricked by at the very beginning that stole from us when we were trying to get the whisker to cause the earthquake from the whale that was trapped. And I was thinking that there was going to be more, more presence of that there. Um, the fact that the game just kept going, like, and not backtracking to previous areas, like, it kept spurning out town after town after town, Kuroguri Hamlet to Kuroguri Hamlet. It never stopped. There were like 15 hamlets. There were like 20 to 30 plus. I lost count of how many towns there were, all of which were filled with tons of NPCs that all had unique dialogue. Edo was crazy. When we finally got to the center, the main capital area, it was nuts. There were hundreds there were hundreds of NPCs you could talk to, considering how many distinct churches there were and how many people were in each of those churches, plus the stores, plus the overworld areas, plus the area where there was the magic show and everything else, the kimono store. I thought it was crazy. I'm like, no wonder this game took until 2023 to localize. It's absolutely stunningly impressive that any game would have this many NPCs to talk to from the 80s. Like I can understand like 90s to me was where I felt RPGs took that leap. It was when we had games like Silver Star, Eternal Blue, like Final Fantasy IV in like 91. Um, if you want to get technical, Cosmic Fantasy 2 on the TurboGrafx CD in 1991 as well, at least as brought over by Working Designs and everything else. I thought all of those things were really kind of the start for these big, expansive RPGs that spanned multiple towns and started to do all of these major things rather than just more small scale RPGs. Because Mother to me was always the biggest of the JRPGs until I played this. Like this game is much longer than Mother. It felt a lot longer than Mother. And I thought it was crazy. Like the visuals for a lot of the enemies, the bosses, the nightmare fuel associated with defeating some of them, just the sheer number of dungeons, it was insane. So the game definitely caught my attention, and it went above and beyond what I thought anything in the 80s was capable of. And so that gets a lot of commendation. But when it comes to gameplay, the game has a number of different flaws to it. Number one is, and I've explained this before in previous streams, but I gotta mention it again because it's part of my final score. The level system in this game, like when you're dealing with fighting enemies, your level should be important only for your stats. It shouldn't influence whether enemies are able to hit you or not. Even though I think Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is a great game, I don't like the fact that in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, your attacks are going to artificially miss more because you're under level, and enemies' attacks are going to artificially hit more because you're over leveled. And if you get too powerful, all of these enemies are going to start whiffing their attacks. You're going to start hitting all of your attacks, and it makes it impossible to really have a true balance for your RPG when you have a system like that. I want to be able to be reasonably challenged the entire way through a game, and when Orochimaru joins, it's a problem because Orochimaru is level locked at like 33 for a while. Like for a good while, 400,000 virtue for a while until he's able to level up to 34. And he can't hit certain bosses. Like he just cannot hit them until he gets higher level. And I just think it's silly. Now, if it was a matter of speed, it'd be one thing, but it's truly a level system because even Tsunade's speed was better than Zariah's for a while, despite the level gap, but Zariah was the only one capable of dodging bosses. So that to me was an issue. Another problem is, of course, the encounter rate. I'm never a fan of that. A game having too high of an encounter rate. I will say with the tech speed implementation, it really helps makes battles going in and out of them quite a bit faster. So even though you're getting encounters a lot, you can get out of them pretty quickly, at least by using that. The game has a great run speed. The fact that it actually has an option to run at that speed is really, really good quality of life, also. But another gameplay problem is the way that it programs stat buffs uh, to to run out before you get a turn. You can be lucky and have your stat increases last for like 10, 11 full turns. Like rarely you'll have them do that, but like one out of every three times they will wear off before the character who got the buff even takes a turn. And it's the oddest thing. Like, I would rather it be like a set 3 turns and then wears off, like you would see in like a Persona or Shin Megami Tensei game, rather than a free-for-all stat buff increase or decrease where it could just randomly decide, oh, I'm wearing off right now. And the aspect that I was really frustrated by and what really hurt this game's score the most, where I decided this can't get a 75 anymore, it has to get a 74, was when the game decided you're going to be robbed of everything in the warehouse and you're going to lose all of the inventory of the characters that you had with very little to no warning. By the time that Tsunade was kidnapped the first time, before you even knew that there was going to be kidnapping, or before you were telegraphed by any of the people that you're going to have to talk to that you needed to tithe all of your gold, tithe all of your things, she was taken away from you with no warning. And so everything in her inventory was gone. And then when Orochimaru was stolen, everything in his inventory is gone. Then later, everything in yours and all the items. The reason that that's a problem and potentially game breaking is if you deposited jutsus into the warehouse, they're gone. If you put your healing jutsu in there, if you put the jutsu that's used to remove poison tiles because you just stopped seeing poison tiles after that one temple, you lose it. You lose it forever. And so I don't understand what you're supposed to do. Yes, you can get infinite gold. You can search on the island that you were captured on in the prison island and get infinite gold and sell it and get all of your stuff back, but you can lose all your jutsus. And it can take you a while to get everything back if you especially if you don't have a healing jutsu. And so I don't know how the average player is supposed to be able to cope with that. I mean, obviously you have to go back and buy everything again. Yes, they give you an NPC in a hamlet that gives you infinite gold. They even give you a hamlet later where that a person just gives away items for free. It still doesn't take away the fact that that was absolutely an atrocious decision to force that kind of divestment on the player. Obviously, we got the orbs back at the very end. We were getting the toad orb, the snake orb, and the Slug Orb all together to be able to use against Masakado to effectively defeat him and bring peace to Japan. Those items were not lost permanently, but everything else was. And that that's just a bad just that was just a bad decision. I'm still unhappy about it, but I mean the game's over. Like, what am I gonna do about it? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll score the game of 74. But aside from that, I'm happy I played this. It could have probably been half the length, but I am happy that I went through this game. I can see why an entire series was birthed from this, why there'd be other games in this series, and I don't know if we got any of the other ones. Again, this is the first time I've heard of this series, but I will certainly investigate the others. I'm certainly they certainly caught my attention with this debut game in '89 that I thought was going to be short, that I thought was going to be mainly more text based, and I mean I was blown away compared to what I expected, even though the game doesn't quite get a solid score from me. So that's that, as they say, is